Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Guys, we'll be discussing some of the key methods to improving your downhill running ability. We'll be breaking this down into 3 key areas. First, training time under tension. We're going to be working at developing a greater skill set, and we'll be looking at training with more force within your training. So 3 key areas that you can start to consider that are really going to help change your physiology, allow your body to become more resilient and tolerant to the eccentric forces that take place when we're descending. But anyone that's ever done any type of long distance running across any type of undulating terrain, after a while, whatever that threshold that you have, you will start to fear the descending far more than the ascending. So going upwards won't be so much of an issue, strangely. And this is always quite a strange one for a lot of people when people are outside, who haven't done much running before. You would immediately think that the downhill part would be the easy bit, the bit that you can just kind of let go of and just have fun with. But actually, after a time, these are the areas that that are going to probably break your body down the quickest. And if you lack that tolerance within the tissues, within the ligaments, tendons, muscle groups, and if you consistently compound them, you may get to a place where you're going to, it may bring about a DNF because you literally can't, you literally overload your body. So for us, it's very much about how do we build up that tolerance in your legs? And it goes for, there's a much greater conversation here than just adding more volume and adding more time on your legs. In the world we're living in now, we have the understanding and the information and the education around us to actually break this down on a physiological level for us to actually understand how we can, get ahead quicker, can understand what's happening, and we can train a bit more smarter than just putting volume into our legs. And a lot of us, truth be told, live in the city, work in the city. We live in flat countries. We work with people in Europe, in certain European countries that don't have an abundance of hills and mountains around them. We work with a lot of people in the city who are obviously desperately wanting to get into the mountains and hills, but they train 9 months of the year on flat city ground. So with maybe a very, very small lump every now and again to run up and down. But how are we going to break this down? How are we going to make this easier for for people to kind of improve their ability? Number 1, guys, is training time under tension. This is your ability to slow the repetitions down within your strength and conditioning work. I list this as the first because the most obvious one would be you getting into the mountains. We're going to talk about that second, okay? What I want us to understand is that you can manipulate the loads and intensities that you place through your body. And those people who aren't that familiar with strength and conditioning work, and those that are beginning their strength and conditioning training and they've been doing it in the short term, understand that there are more variables that you can be manipulating to increase the intensity of your training than just adding more weight. You can be training from home, body weight based, resistance band based, very light weight based, so very light free weights, and still be applying this type of tactic. And that's what I want. I want you guys to be able to do this in any environment, when you're traveling, when you're on the move, when you feel like you can't be as consistent with your strength work as possible. Training time under tension, slowing the repetition down, focusing primarily on that eccentric control of every single repetition, the lowering phase. This ability the research across multiple different aspects has been shown that when we slow the repetition down, it forces more stability to take place within the joint. It forces a greater level of essentially recruitment within the key muscle groups and the tendons, and you're placing a greater level of tension and time of work on those key structures, the ligament, the tendon, the muscle groups. This is all good stuff because especially when we're in a strength and conditioning environment, whether it's at home or in a commercial gym, it's in a controlled dosage. You're doing one set of 5 reps, 6 reps, 8 reps, 10 reps, whatever you're working to, and you're doing 3 or 4 sets of. And you may be doing that with more of a unilateral focus. You're doing some sort of single leg, single arm variation. And in this case, it'll be lower body focus, obviously. But you're really starting to place more time on the tension. And if you are working from an advanced program, you will literally see it written in front of you. Perform each rep with a 4-second to a 4-second count, to a 5-second count. Down, 2, 3, pause, drive up for 1. And you'll see those symbols lining it up for you. Every single rep. And you can imagine the difference between doing a set of 8 to 10 reps where you're literally up, down 1, up, down 2. You're performing that one set within the space of maybe 15, 20 seconds. Whereas as soon as you add that 5 seconds per rep, you're suddenly placing that those structures, those tendons, ligaments, muscle groups, the joint structure under maybe 3 times as much work, but you're not increasing the weight that you're putting through it. But what you're doing is you're forcing that body to stabilize. You're forcing that body, you're placing a greater level of tension through that ligament, that tendon, that muscle over the reps. And of course, we can manipulate the amount of force you place through it, the range of motion that you work to, the amount of repetitions and sets you do. But right now, I want you to be focusing on the time under tension principle. You're performing a simple step up off a chair, off a box in a gym, off a bench. You drive up to that high knee position. You're standing tall at the top of that step up. You're holding that high knee position. You're showing us great stability. But then, as you descend, you sit back into that heel. You're lowering your body down. You're literally gonna guide your body down so that your other foot just briefly touches the ground, and then you drive straight back up. That type of control is going to take a hell of a lot of stability and a lot of recruitment through your glute, through your hamstring, through your quad to stabilize that knee. You'll notice that you're just going to want to disengage and collapse. A lot of the time, every fiber of your being just wants to switch off and just dump that leg onto the ground and just collapse onto the ground. Don't. Do that with a single leg squat. Do it with a step up. You can some of the most simple exercises that you can perform, you can get a great deal more work out of. But what you're doing, guys, is that eccentric force that you're putting under that joint. It's going to be simulating the amount of force and stress that goes through your joints as you're descending out on the trail. All right. So that is what's literally picking you apart is that impact, that descending impact, and those forces that are consistently going through that joint. And what you lack through the patellar tendon, through your hamstring tendons, through your hamstring, your hamstring group, your quad group, you lack the depth of conditioning. You're lacking the depth of strength, and your body just literally becomes overwhelmed, overloaded, and then it becomes inflamed, and then that's obviously potentially puts you out of the event or puts you out of the run. So it's placing greater levels of intensity through the body without having to do much more than slow things down. And you can apply this mindset to pretty much any lower body strength exercise to a certain degree, as long as you have that control. But we still want to promote good range of motion. We still want to promote good symmetry. And then as soon as we can, let's load it up. Because again, when we are descending, what are we thinking about? Well, we're thinking that we're going to be literally quadrupling our body weight through our joints. When we look at some of the research, we can see that when we hit the ground, our impact forces are 4, 6, 8 times our body weight. So 4 times 70 kilo, 8 times 70 kilo, whatever you weigh, it can be absolutely astronomical, the amount of load and force that goes through our joints when we're running, yet alone descending. So we want to be getting our body up to a place where it can tolerate this type of abuse, essentially. But we're doing it in nice, manageable chunks. And obviously, guys, this takes away the mindset where you feel like you have to be out in the mountains trying to do it. And you can bring about this physiological adaptations through focused scientific approach. And this is why the gym, it can be such a powerful place for any runner, because it allows you to build a chassis, which is what you're doing. You're building a strong underpinning of your body so that it can tolerate greater levels of work. Moving into point 2, developing a skill set. Nothing will beat this. Your ability to get out into the mountains, get out into the trails that are similar terrain, similar complexity potentially, similar descending, degrees of descent, and working on that. I question whether a lot of people will like their interval training. Some people will swerve doing interval-based training. They like to stay in the nice zone 2, zone 3 effort kind of training. Similarly, very few people I've ever come across who self-coach will go and find a hill and practice their descending. Not just their ascending, but they're practice their descending. But some of the best work on it, because you can be, not only is it a skill set that you want to have come race day, that you can literally be taking places, and chasing people down on the descending, but it's also about conditioning your body. People are very happy to condition their lungs, their aerobic ability, their cardiovascular system with their zone 2 steady state efforts. But are you in the business of developing the neurological pathways required in terms of the skill set you need to traverse these complex terrains? You need to be getting out into complex trails. If you can't get into the mountains, which is what where you're headed, or you want to be, can you find similar complex trails that are maybe much shorter and gain less extreme, but can they be environments that you can practice? But the approach that you take is not that I'm going to take, you're not going out there for 8 hours of the day. Like, you've got to be microdosing again. You've got to be taking it with the same approach as you would hopefully any type of training approach. You want to be building up that tolerance. You're building up your microdosing. You're doing sets of 20 minutes. You're thinking about how much can I tolerate. If you've only got a certain distance you can run across this certain terrain, great. But then break it up. Can we repeat, use it as an interval session? It's just a different way of thinking. I know there's a freedom aspect, obviously, when you're out on the trails and you just want to keep on going. But when it comes to actually building a body that can tolerate these types of terrains, think with a bit more accuracy. Think with a bit more like breaking this down so you can actually attack these weaknesses. Otherwise, you're kind of just touching on them. There's a kind of surface level training, and you want to be actually dialing in on these areas of weakness at times. And especially this one, because no matter how strong your engine is, your knees will continuously, there's multiple people out there right now, and some of you listening, you've got the engine for it. That's not in question. It's whether you have the chassis for it right now. So what are you doing to get on top of this? So microdosing, working on that skill set, getting into those environments, doing your research, getting out there, but doing it in a logical a method which allows you to build this up. And lastly, training with more force. You cannot avoid, and I touched on the first point, you cannot avoid the amount of load that goes through your body when you run. You are foolish to think otherwise. Look at a beginner runner, hear a beginner runner. Even on just a flat ground, you can hear their footfall. Listen to an experienced, well-conditioned runner. You can hear their footfall. Notice the difference. Slapping the ground versus literally bouncing off the ground. Like the ability to absorb and produce force is far more efficient. If you are a runner who's not working on your low-level plyometric skill, your ability to jump, land, hop, skip, and you're scared of that, then what is that going to look like when you start to fatigue and your gait starts to break down? So we want to improve. We're constantly looking to improve your tolerance for absorbing force and producing force through your lower body. Again, your ligaments, tendons, they're designed, whether it's attaching bone to bone, bone to muscle, muscle to bone, whatever we're talking about here. But we are essentially, as a mechanism, your spring mechanism in your lower body, we are looking to we want your spring mechanism, your ability to land, to be as efficient as it was when you were 15 years old. You didn't even question it back then. Maybe fast forward 20, 30, 40 years, whatever you are now, you've lost that ability, but you've got to regain that. And to do that, you've got to be training for it. And it's not just got to come from the pitter-patter of being out on the trail. You've got to be then bullying that, like reaching higher thresholds, higher peaks of power, of resistance, of force through your legs so that you're elevating your average. So we want to elevate your average level of tolerance so that when you go back out there, you can withstand a greater deal of intensity, a greater level of terrain, and your body's going to be able to tolerate it. If you have a low tolerance and you're not working on improving that tolerance and you're just trying to add more volume, it's just a wear and tear. You're going to end up breaking your body down. All right. So what does this look like? It's small dosages of low-level plyometric work. It's going to be working on skills, like working on making sure that you're running drills. So you're going to be including A skips, B skips, C skip drills. You're going to be working on your ability to again change direction quickly, to be able to rebound and explode off your feet, left and right. Bilaterally, unilaterally. It just should be there, nice and consistently throughout your program all year round, in low dosages, in high dosages, depending on what phase of training you're in. But do not avoid force, because that is what's either going to make you or break you. And most people, as they age, it breaks them. And and become more susceptible to these inflammation of tendons and ligaments. And that's what obviously our community is riddled with. So 3 points, guys. Develop more time under tension within your training, develop your skill set, and then work with more force. 3 key points that I want you to be thinking about in terms of your overall programming, how you're approaching your run programming, and how you're approaching your strength and conditioning programming, and how you're going to infiltrate that across all of your program. All right, guys, speak soon.